It was supposed to be a quiet drive, just a break from the job, a break from the noise. But that night, under the heaviest rain he'd seen in years, Detective Arlen Crane found something he wasn't meant to see. A forgotten estate, a letter with no sender, and a door that wasn't in any blueprint. Behind that door, not just secrets, something waiting. Something that knew his name. And the moment he touched the handle, it began. The lights flickered, the air turned cold, and time started to bleed. What if the cases you left behind didn't leave you? What if the door found you first? Don't blink, don't turn away. The door is open, and this time, someone's watching from the other side.
Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Past Portal channel, where every mystery opens a new door to the unknown. Leave your thoughts in the comments. We read every one of them. May peace, clarity, and courage follow you wherever your path may lead. And for those of you who've already liked, subscribed, shared, and commented, thank you. You help us keep the portal open.
The rain fell like a curtain of needles, relentless and cold as it hammered the windshield of Detective Arlen Crane's old sedan. He had no business being on that remote road, deep in the countryside, far from his scheduled vacation route. Yet something had pulled him off course. An envelope slipped under his apartment door that morning, sealed without a stamp, containing only a handwritten note that read, "Find the door before it finds you." He had dismissed it as a prank, but hours later, as if under some quiet compulsion, he was navigating twisting back roads beneath a sky that refused to let up. His GPS had long stopped working, and the headlights flickered as the battery groaned under the weight of the storm. Then, through the haze, he saw it, a crooked mailbox leaning by a gravel path, the name Vollinger barely legible under moss and rust. He turned in without thinking, tires slipping over the soaked stones, trees arching above him like skeletal guardians. At the end of the path stood a mansion that looked as though it had been forgotten by time. 3 stories of rotting wood, iron gates half-hinged, windows shuttered and glassless. No lights, no sign of movement, just the moaning of the wind and the occasional crack of thunder. As Arlen stepped out of the car, the rain soaked through his coat in seconds, but he didn't flinch. The envelope had said this was where it would begin. Each step toward the porch creaked beneath his boots, and the air felt thicker, harder to breathe. A strange pressure grew in his chest. He reached out for the brass doorknob, but before he could touch it, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a narrow hallway lit only by the storm flashing behind him. Inside the threshold, the scent of mildew and old smoke welcomed him like a memory long buried. He stood still, unsure if he should call out, but something in the air told him silence was safer. The walls were faded portraits, faces blurred by dust and time, their eyes seemingly angled downward as if shamed or mourning. His boots left muddy prints on the warped floorboards as he stepped inside. Then the door behind him slammed shut, followed by an unmistakable sound, a faint shuffle, like bare feet dragging across the wood. Arlen slowly turned, his hand reaching for the pistol tucked beneath his coat. But the hallway was empty. Still, he couldn't shake the sensation that something had just moved. Not away from him, closer.
Arlen advanced cautiously through the dim corridor, his flashlight slicing through the dust-heavy air. Each step echoed unnaturally, as if the house amplified the sound of his presence. The hallway split into several doors, but only one stood slightly ajar, leaking a faint draft into the air. He nudged it open and entered what seemed to be an old study. The scent here changed, less of rot, more of burnt paper and iron. Shelves sagged under the weight of ancient tomes, many half-burned or water-damaged. In the corner sat a grand mahogany desk, layered with soot and yellowed papers, and on top of it, an envelope identical to the one he had received that morning. The handwriting was the same, but this time, the letter contained a photo. His own photo, taken from behind. The timestamp on the bottom corner was dated 2 days ago. The realization gripped his spine with ice. Whoever sent the letter had followed him, watched him, knew where he would go, and now he was here, inside a house that felt more grave than home. He examined the walls again, scanning for hidden cameras, wires, anything to explain the growing unease in his bones. That's when he noticed the oddity at the back corner of the room. A tall bookshelf, leaning ever so slightly forward, leaving a thin strip of exposed wall behind it. Arlen moved toward it, pressed his palm against the plaster, and felt the vibrations of wind, unnatural, as though it came from within the walls. He took a breath, braced his body, and shoved the shelf aside. It screeched against the floorboards, revealing a concealed outline, a door without a knob. Just a seamless frame, carved directly into the wall, painted to disappear. A strange symbol was etched at the center, an eye surrounded by spirals like a hypnotic seal. Arlen ran his fingers along the edge and felt a subtle shift in the air. Behind him, a low creaking sound started again. He spun around, nothing. But the door now seemed different, its lines pulsing as if responding to his touch. Suddenly, every candle in the room flared to life at once, though he hadn't noticed any wicks before. Shadows sprang along the walls like dancers in slow motion. He took a step back, but the wooden floor groaned and dipped beneath him. From the study window, he could see the rain still falling in steady sheets, but his reflection, barely visible in the glass, was no longer alone.
Arlen's breath fogged the air as he stepped toward the door embedded in the wall. He pressed against it with both hands, and slowly, almost begrudgingly, the panel swung inward with a gust of damp, earthy wind. A staircase descended into darkness, spiraling down into the unknown. The air was colder there, as though the earth itself was exhaling secrets it never meant to release. He turned on his flashlight again, its beam catching motes of dust and spiderwebs that clung to the low ceiling. Each step down groaned under his weight, but the silence around him never cracked. It was not the quiet of emptiness, but the kind of silence that felt deliberate, controlled, like something was listening and choosing not to respond. At the bottom, the stone corridor opened into a wide, circular chamber. He was standing inside a vault. Lining the walls were dozens of metal cabinets, each marked with rusted police insignias, the kind used to store closed or unsolved case files. Arlen moved from drawer to drawer, fingers trembling, until he found one that bore his own badge number etched in faded ink. Inside were familiar folders, cases he had worked, victims he had interviewed, places he had visited. But someone had gone through them, added notes in a handwriting that wasn't his. Scribbled in red ink were unsettling comments. "You missed this one. She was never really gone. They still hear her." At the center of the room stood a long wooden table, and on it a mirror no larger than a window. The frame was antique, carved with symbols he didn't recognize, but the glass shimmered unnaturally, almost like water disturbed by wind. As he stared into it, the light behind him flickered, and a figure appeared. The image in the mirror was not his reflection. It was a girl, young, pale, eyes wide with something between terror and recognition. Her mouth opened as if to scream, but no sound emerged. He spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. When he turned back, the mirror had returned to stillness, showing only his face again. Yet behind his reflection now stood faint shapes, blurred as if underwater. He reached for the mirror, fingertips brushing its surface. A cold shock passed through his arm and he jerked away. Something was linking this place to the past, and that link was alive. He opened a drawer below the mirror and found a photo, the same girl from the mirror, her name scrawled on the back in childish writing. Clara Volinger. That was when he knew. He wasn't investigating a crime. He was reopening a door that had never truly closed.
Arlen clutched the photograph in his hand, his fingers pressing against the paper until the edges curled. The name Clara Volinger echoed in his thoughts like a bell tolling in reverse. He scanned the chamber for more traces of her, something tangible that would explain her presence, her warning. One cabinet, buried beneath the rest, had no lock and bore no label. He pried it open, and inside found a single case file, yellowed with age, brittle at the corners. It detailed the disappearance of Clara Volinger, age 13, last seen in this very house. Her father, Everett Volinger, had reportedly gone mad days after her vanishing and took his own life in the attic. The file ended abruptly. There were no autopsy reports, no witness statements, not even a closing signature. This case had been buried, deliberately, and someone had wanted him to find it. He left the vault in silence, ascending the stairs slowly, his flashlight flickering as if weakened by the truth it had just revealed. Back in the study, he laid the file open across the desk, alongside the mirror that now looked dull and lifeless. He noticed something he hadn't before. A doll seated on the shelf behind the desk. Its hair was matted, dress torn, one glass eye missing. But in its lap sat a tiny envelope. Arlen opened it to reveal a note written in the same script as before. "She remembers you." Confused, he turned to the photograph again, and suddenly Clara's face in the image seemed more vivid. Her lips, once sealed in stillness, now parted slightly. Her eyes appeared to look directly into his. He recoiled, but the photo remained unchanged. He wasn't imagining it. This house wasn't just hiding memories, it was projecting them. He heard footsteps, light, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside the study. He rose and exited the room, gun drawn, every muscle taut. The corridor was empty, but the air was charged. A faint trail of wet footprints led toward the eastern wing of the house, a part he hadn't explored. He followed them past torn curtains and broken furniture, past a hallway of locked doors, until one stood open. Inside, he found a bedroom preserved in eerie stillness. On the nightstand sat a locket, open, with Clara's face inside. A child's voice broke the silence, soft and near. "You let it happen." Arlen spun around, but no one was there. The door slammed behind him, and for a moment he saw himself in the vanity mirror, only it wasn't him. The man in the reflection was older, worn, his eyes hollow. And behind that man, Clara stood watching.
The silence in the room was unbearable, pressing against Arlen's chest like invisible hands. He approached the mirror again, heart thudding like a warning drum. The reflection shifted once more, revealing the same study, but it was no longer decayed. It was warm, polished, and alive with candlelight. A fireplace crackled in the background. Books lined the shelves in pristine order. And in the center stood Clara, but older now. Her face familiar yet strange, as if time had folded her youth into years she never truly lived. She looked directly at him through the glass, her lips moving slowly, whispering words he couldn't hear. He leaned closer, struggling to understand. Suddenly, her eyes darkened, and her voice echoed inside his skull without sound. "You opened it." The mirror rippled violently, and the world behind it melted into shadows. He staggered back, just as the bookshelf in the real study trembled, shifting with a groan, as if the house was reacting to her words. The hidden door, once sealed and silent, now pulsed like a heartbeat. Arlen stepped toward it, unable to resist the force that drew him in. His hand, numb with cold, reached out and touched the surface. It burned. The door swung open, revealing not stone steps this time, but a corridor of glass and flickering light. As he entered, the temperature dropped. His breath turned to mist. The hallway seemed endless, each step taking him deeper into memory, not space. He saw glimpses in the glass, his old cases,
victims' faces, choices he regretted. But all paths led to one room at the end. And there, he saw her again. Clara, waiting. She stood beside the same desk from earlier, though everything around her was warped, like a dream held too long. On the desk were stacks of case files, but they were not his. They were versions of his life. Files labeled Arlen never left the force. Arlen ignored the letter. Arlen never found the house. She looked up at him, and for the first time, her eyes showed fear. "It wasn't supposed to be you," she whispered, her voice a trembling melody. "You weren't meant to remember." The room quaked, the mirror behind her shattered. Arlen stepped forward, desperate for answers, but the world began to tear. Reality folded like paper, and suddenly, the walls started to vanish, revealing a void of endless rain beyond. The door had not opened to a room. It had opened to a fate.
Arlen gasped as the floor beneath him cracked, the entire room dissolving into fragments that floated weightless in the downpour. He stood alone in a suspended space, rain falling in every direction, yet never landing. All around him were glimpses, echoes of places he once knew, memories replaying through warped reflections. The voice of Clara still lingered, though her presence had vanished. He spun, searching for something solid, something real. Then he saw it, a doorway suspended in the dark beyond the rain. No walls, no frame, just a glowing outline waiting to be crossed. He stepped forward cautiously, every footfall met with silence that rang louder than any sound. The moment he passed through, he was back in the study, but it was not the same. The light was wrong. The dust was undisturbed. The photo on the desk now showed a girl standing alone. Clara was gone. He blinked. His coat was dry. The desk was clean. No signs of soot or age, yet something felt fractured. He reached for the mirror, but it was no longer on the wall. Instead, a new object stood where it had been, a case folder stamped "Active." He opened it and saw his own photograph, recent and sharp, marked with the word "Missing." A note clipped to the top read, "Detective Arlen Crane, last seen investigating Vollinger Estate, status unresolved." The sound of ticking filled the room, but there was no clock. As he stepped back, he caught his reflection in the window. This time, it was perfect. Except the man staring back at him wasn't moving, not blinking, not breathing. The door behind him slowly closed, sealing without sound. Outside, the rain continued, washing over the estate in endless rhythm. The house stood empty again, yet not forgotten. In the hidden vault below, a new drawer had opened. Inside was a mirror, untouched, waiting, and beside it, a photograph. The ink was still drying. It showed a man standing in front of a door carved into stone, eyes wide with knowing. A door that should never have opened. And beneath the photo, scrawled in red, was a single sentence. He found it too late.
In cities across Europe, where centuries-old architecture stands side by side with modern life, hidden doors are not always made of wood or stone. Sometimes they take the shape of unanswered letters, unsolved memories, or choices we leave behind. People walk past forgotten alleys, abandoned estates, and quiet apartments, never knowing what stories still echo behind those walls. Just like Detective Arlen, many of us chase clarity through storms, unaware that the past may be watching us back. In the quiet of early mornings, under the gray skies of Paris or the misty lanes of Prague, there are places that remember more than they reveal. A whisper on the wind, a shadow in the reflection, a silence too heavy to ignore. These are not just moments of fear, they're reminders that every life leaves traces, and not every door should be opened without knowing what waits inside. If this story stirred your thoughts or gave you chills, do not let it end here.
Support the journey by giving this video a like, subscribing to Past Portal channel, and sharing it with those who love the forgotten, the strange, and the unseen. Every click helps us unlock the next mystery. Thank you for watching.